Sir X-a-Lot says, what does Bischoff think of the state of wrestling presently and the direction it's going? What would he identify as the good, the bad, and the ugly?
That's a fun question. Thank you very much, Sir X-a-Lot. I mean, I think the state of the wrestling business is extremely strong. I don't know how anybody could deny that. You can. I mean, it all comes down to revenue. That's the ultimate measuring stick. How much revenue is being generated in the professional wrestling industry? I don't know that it's ever been as close as it to being as successful as it is today. So by that measure, it's hugely successful and continuing to grow, primarily because of WWE and the inroads that they're making with sponsorships and with their premium live events and cities bidding. I'm here in Minneapolis, and one of the big news stories yesterday on local news is that Minneapolis is in the running for WrestleMania. And there's as much excitement about that here locally as there would be if Super Bowl was coming. I mean, it was crazy. They were out interviewing people on the street. It was nuts. I was proud. I was excited. Not because I have a dog in the hunt. I'm not there. I'm not going to be there. I don't want to be in WWE. I'm having fun being a fan. But to see that energy and amount of excitement for a, premier, wrestling event for sure, WrestleMania, the biggest of them all. But to see that is exciting. And to see that same thing happening in Perth, Australia, in France and other parts of the world. I don't know how you can be a wrestling fan, or in my case, somebody that spent 30 odd years in the business, and not be really excited about that growth. Television is a different, if you're going to use television ratings and the number of people that are watching television in the United States as your barometer, then you might have some issues. You might have a debate. You might have some questions. But if you just look at the revenue that's generated by the industry, and that's really all that matters, because that revenue is generated in different ways. Some of it, obviously, by television. That's a big, big piece of the revenue puzzle, right? Television rights fees. But there's so many more aspects of it, and all of that is growing. I think the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery, rolled the dice with AEW and was willing to give them an opportunity, and perhaps that opportunity will pay off. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Perhaps that'll pay off, but that's an exciting thing. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the wrestling business in general, regardless of how you feel about any one promotion. That's how I feel about the general state. What's the good? I think I just covered the good is growing. What's the bad? I don't know that there's any bad, in terms of it hurting the business. I think some of the extremes that some people try to go to get themselves over in the environment that we have today on television, I think that's pretty bad and can get ugly. I think
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, the blood. I think going to extremes of violence in lieu of art, and by art, I mean the storytelling component, as we talked about earlier. I won't beat it up again. Quality, disciplined, structured storytelling that's compelling and gets the audience into the program. That's the art of it. I think the art of telling that story in the ring is a big part of it. And I think sometimes there is a tendency by some people and the producers they work with to go to an extreme to try to get the attention, to try to get the awareness. And that extreme is usually excessive amounts of violence and blood. And I don't think that element of the product and the presentation of the product can make up for lack of story and lack of characters. So I think the reliance upon and the go-to for that kind of extreme element of professional wrestling, that's always been there. Right. I think in today's environment, it's bad. It's a bad choice because it ultimately will turn off program directors, television networks, advertisers, and that's bad for business. But I think overall, we're in a pretty healthy state of affairs.
I want to bring that up to you because, or I'm glad you brought that up because there was a tweet that I saw. I wanted to mention that I saw over the weekend. There was a report somewhere, and if Silva can find it, we'll give him credit. But the gist is that some folks behind the scenes in WWE are a little upset with The Rock. Apparently, Nick Khan and Paul Hunter, Triple H, that's easier for me to remember, sent out some sort of a memo or gave a heads up to Talon or whatever the report was, because I don't have it right in front of me. But the gist was, hey, we're still trying to be PG. So don't worry about what The Rock's doing on social media and what he says in his promos. Because you and I sort of talked about that in the last few weeks. Man, he made me laugh out loud when he said, now go home and smoke some more crack. I mean, it just got all over me. It's one of the funnier things I've ever heard. In comedy, it would be called a callback. I loved it. And then he did some more sort of risque stuff on social media this week where he's dropping the F-bomb and things like that. And then did a pretty risque for what it was, little rock concert, if you will, in Memphis. And allegedly a lady flashed and they had to have the screen go black. And it does feel like WWE is on a slippery slope there too. But if the report is true, that is not their intention. Rock is just doing what Rock wants to do. And well, who can tell him no? What do you make of that report?
Not much, because I don't know the details of it, and I didn't see. I did read about everything you talked about, but I didn't see the incident. I saw it online where in the middle of the concert everything went black, and I saw the narrative associated with it.
Yeah.
But if you've got a guy like Rock who's obviously going to suck all the air out of the room, he's going to get the most attention of anybody on the roster, especially given the circumstances. Coming in and being a part of WrestleMania, kind of late in the game, so to speak, and all the attention that's on that story and everything, and just the fact that he's fucking Rock, right? If Rock has got latitude and the ability to do things creatively, but the rest of the roster can't, it's just hard to manage. The rest of that roster are pros. I don't think anybody there feels like they need to go out there and be as graphic as Rock has been and drop F-bombs and things like that. I don't think anybody feels the absolute need to go out there to do that to get themselves over. They've proven that to themselves already, that they can get over without it. But it does create kind of a double standard. And my guess is that internally, a lot of people just know that and accept it for what it is. But if it continues, like if we see this go beyond WrestleMania and it becomes a consistent thing, eventually you're going to have some talent that are going to start fighting back and having some questions, and it'll create some issues down the road if it continues. Something, I don't know, maybe this is just because I want it to be true, because I'm guilty of that sometimes. If I want something bad enough to be true, I will see it as true, even if it's not. It's human nature. But I'm hoping that we're going to get through WrestleMania and that aspect of what WWE is presenting will settle down, because it does. Now, look, Raw's going to be on Netflix, right? So you get away with a lot of things on Netflix that you couldn't get away with on even cable television. But it's still Raw, it's still Rock, and if it goes too far, you're going to have advertisers, you're going to have sponsors. They're going to go, I know it's Rock and it's wrestling, but this is just a little too much. That's the part that worries me. I talk like a trucker. I have the vocabulary sometimes of a sailor.
There you go. Yeah.
And I get it. But I'm also aware of that. And sometimes I try to,
you're not doing it on TV. Yeah.
Slow my roll a little bit, even on this show, because I don't want to, I realize even on this show, we've got some advertisers that have been with us for 5 or 6 years, right? Manscaped, for example, a lot of them.
Well, buddy, after the things I've said on Manscaped, you can't do no harm. You know what I mean?
No, well, not with Manscaped, because they've got a great But there are other advertising agencies where there are people we don't know that tune into our show to hear their ad. They have to do a quality check, make sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. And they may hear things that they're just not comfortable having their client in. So even I'm aware of that. And that's on a podcast, have to be careful. Television, even more so. You can't afford to create a situation where you've got media buyers and some of the biggest ad agencies in the world going, yeah, I know wrestling's really popular, but it's just a little too much for this client. You don't want that.
Well, here's the actual report. The WWE locker room is reportedly unhappy with The Rock being allowed to curse on TV, while the rest has to stick to PG language, according to a new report from SE Scoops. The WWE higher up sent out a memo a few weeks ago to talent, reminding them they need to stick to PG language even on social media. Even The Rock gets to drop as many F-bombs as he wants to online, even on live television. Now there's a problem. I am told that a lot of talent are asking why Rock gets a pass and no one else is allowed to curse. The thinking is that even if he is the big movie star, shouldn't he play by the same rules? So he can curse and use that to get over, but everyone else is handcuffed. Well, then there's a response from The Rock this weekend where he basically says through an IG post, networks and standards and practices have issues with my language, but I'd rather be real than not. I talk from the heart, shoot from the hip, and try to always have fun. And clearly it's working. I, for one, hope that we break the chains of PG and we just get back to the way things used to be. Because, Lord, the Rock segments have been super entertaining, have they not?
They have. And I agree with you. I would love to see us get away from the, when I say us, I don't mean content wise as much. It's not like, I mean, the kind of language that we're talking about, the kind of stuff that Rock's been saying, particularly in social media, occasionally, appropriately done, can enhance the story or the moment and make it more interesting and feel more real and honest, because it is how people talk. It's how politicians talk. It's how teachers talk. It's how business executives talk. Maybe not in public, not when they're on camera, but it is the conversation of our life across the boards for the most part. Not everybody, but for the most part. And sometimes done judiciously and appropriately, it can make things feel more real. It can have that kind of, I don't want to say shock value because nobody's shocked, but it definitely makes you take notice when you hear something in terms of, F-bombs or whatever that you wouldn't normally hear on television. It gets your attention. That's the purpose of it. But when it's done too frequently, it then becomes boring. It becomes a crutch. That's the best way to say it. It becomes a crutch, much like blood and extreme violence and, jumping off a fucking ladder that the referee's holding for you onto a plate of glass when there's nobody around, just so you can say you did it. And you have that small, we're talking about Darby Allin specifically, and you've got that small little hardcore bloodthirsty group of fucking idiots that think that that's what wrestling is. And oh my God, this is awesome, right? If that's as far as you're going to appeal to your audience and you rely upon that too much, it hurts the product overall because you're relying on that as opposed to great character and great story. Same is true when you rely on F-bombs and a type of, R-rated type of narrative that we're seeing a little bit on social media from Rock or even on television. If you rely upon it too much, none of it matters. It won't matter. It'll quit being an effective tool. And perhaps that's what WWE is trying to do. They're trying to find that sweet spot where you can judiciously, from a creative perspective, allow a talent or within a specific story for a good reason to step into that world of reality vis-a-vis their narrative and some of the language they use. But you want to control it. If all of a sudden everybody's doing it, it won't matter anymore. And then what do you have? You have to be careful. And I want to believe that that's what WWE is trying to do. They're not saying, no, never, you're never going to be able to do it. I'm hoping that they're looking at this particular situation. Yes, there's some latitude because after all, it is The Rock. He is Dwayne Johnson. There's going to be some latitude there, folks, just like there has been with every top talent in every company in the world, whether it's a television company, movie company, whatever. Your top talent is going to be able to get latitude that a lot of other talents aren't. That's just a fact of life. But I'm hoping that they're trying to be judicious about it, and the talent will understand. I find it interesting. I don't even know who SE Scoops is. I don't know any of the people behind it. I've seen them post stories before, but I don't have much of an opinion about them or the quality of their stories. But much like Bad Faith, when a story starts out with the wrestling locker room, almost as if they're trying to give you the impression that they were back there doing interviews, right? And they're talking to all the people in the locker room. That's the implication. That's the inference, right? The locker room in general is upset. You may have one or two people that are going, hey, how come Rock gets to say fuck you and I don't? But all of a sudden it's being reported as the wrestling locker room. Probably isn't as big of an issue as SE Scoops is making it out to be.